So, as we switch from overtraining, let's talk about how can we address it and recover.
Okay, so recovery, I break down recovery into several areas, right? One is before you even begin training, what did you do the day before? That will determine what your recovery should be or what you should be looking at. So let's give you an example here. Guy does speed work, okay, on Monday. He has to employ certain types of recovery techniques so he can do, let's say, weight training on Wednesday or the next day. If he's going to do some lower body weights, let's say, the next day. So each of these training elements sometimes require a different sort of mode of regeneration. And we can have a whole podcast and several podcasts on each of these one elements, but I'm just going to give you some basic stuff that most people probably do currently or probably have been popularized for whatever reason. One is the ice bath. People have been soaking themselves in tubs with buckets of ice in there.
Yeah. Now they have this new one called cryotherapy too.
That's right.
It's kind of blowing up all over the place.
Yeah. So ice is definitely a good mode, a good medium to heal. I mean, there's some controversy with respect to that as well. There's guys out there saying you don't need ice and you get swelling. I tend to subscribe to the fact that, you know what, if something's hurting, right? If I can put ice on it, it's going to kill the pain without having me to ingest something. I'll take that. And there is such a thing that occurs with ice. It's called the Huntington's phenomenon. It occurs to protect the tissue, and it bypasses your central nervous system, your autonomic or your voluntary nervous system, and it's basically there to, when the tissue gets a certain temperature, your body no longer can pump in that area. So what it starts to do is try to protect that tissue by causing a vasodilation, vasoconstriction of tissue to pump more fluid in and out. Right? So that usually occurs when the tissue is getting close to numb. So when you're using ice, it'll go through 4 phases typically. It'll get cold, it gets very cold, and then it feels like burning, and then it finally gets numb. Most gel packs they'll hit very cold. They won't get into what we call the critical stage of healing or regeneration for ice, which is basically burning. And so most people in the ice baths, I think they just get very cold, if you ask me. I've never done it myself, but I don't think they get into that burning or they're into that numb state. Because if you're in a numb state, basically, it's pretty dangerous. The other thing, too, with ice baths, practicality of it, okay? You got to get a lot of ice and all that kind of stuff. And then where did it come from? From my understanding, it came from football and rugby. And when these guys are basically going through a car wreck every game, for the most part, they have a lot of internal bruising, which cannot be, you either slap on like 50 ice packs in the guy, and he looks like he came from Antarctica and basically he's a Yeti, or he's got like, by that time I'm pretty sure his nuts have basically, got into his body and have receded. They're no longer there anymore. You could do that for that particular type of sometimes a type of sport. However, for the average person, I think it's overkill. What would be better would be going to doing contrast showers, hot and cold, right? If you don't have access to, let's say, a sauna and a cold pool. So if you go in your local area, you got to get some Russian guys that some friends there, and they'll probably tell you where the closest banya is. A banya in Russian is a sauna house. What it is there, don't get any ideas here. It's a bunch of naked men in there.
Well, it depends on the day.
Depends on the day. If you go to family day, it's. I
would strongly suggest go family day, guys. If you're alone.
Yeah, if you don't want to go commando, go on family day.
Yeah.
Usually they have that. But anyway, so what happens? You have this massive sauna. Sometimes you can put like at least 10, 15, 20 people in the sauna. It's a big sauna. And right after the sauna, they have a dunk, which basically is like a bucket, and they pull the lever, and
it's cold water.
It's
right?
cold water.
Yeah.
Then they have a very cold pool. So the idea is you go in the sauna, right, and then you dunk in the pool and you go back in the sauna. You do this for, you do this a couple of times. The idea is to get the your skin cold enough over a period of time so the heat from the sauna can penetrate deeper. Because initially when you go in the sauna, it's hot, right? And the skin will just basically burn almost, right? So you want to be able to cool the skin so that it allows that infrared heat to penetrate deeper. The other option is you can get, now over here and where we live here, there's a Korean sauna. And Korean sauna, everybody's got their own sauna, I think. Korean sauna is a little different. It's an infrared sauna, so it's a dry heat. When you walk into that sucker, you're not inundated with that kind of, all of a sudden a wall of heat coming at you. It's a slow bake. It takes longer to penetrate you than the Russian sauna in a lot of ways. But in a lot of ways, it doesn't stress the system out as much as a Russian sauna. So if I were to do speed work, the best recovery really would be with the infrared sauna. If I was to do strength work, which involves, let's say now, more muscles in one sense, I would probably do the Russian sauna, right? The contrast with that. Again, everybody's sort of different. I've had a sprinter come up here for like a 1 week intensive. I took him to both places. And he didn't like being dunked in the going in the cold
He didn't like the banya?
No, he didn't like that. He's from the Caribbean, so cold for him is like an ice cube in a glass of water. That's cold for him. So
I remember the first time I did banya with you, and it was a pretty crazy experience because we went from like you said, from hot to cold and hot to cold, and just that basically the change of those two extreme environments. I became lightheaded. I don't know where I was. My skin was like irritating. It was not irritating, but it was kind of like vibrating. I guess you could say to a certain extent. And I'll tell you what, I had probably the best sleep of that whole year. And I woke up the next day feeling like $1 million.